Hello, dear sleepy listener. You've arrived right on time. Not time in the sense of clocks or calendars, but in the way starlight arrives after crossing 1 billion quiet years. You're here now, and that is enough. Let the edges of the day fade away. Let the breath in your chest become slow, like the turning of planets. You're floating now, gently, not toward an answer, but toward a question so large and silent it stretches wider than the sky itself. Can the universe hear itself thinking? Before you drift off to sleep, take a moment to like this video, leave a gentle comment about your favorite science moment, and subscribe to continue reading these bedtime stories. And if you'd like, share your location and time zone so we know where your wonder is blooming tonight. Now, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let your curiosity drift among the stars. It starts with a whisper. Not sound, but a sensation like the way you can feel a thought rising just before it has words. The universe doesn't speak in sentences, it doesn't write in ink, but still, something moves beneath it all, a current, a pattern, a hum too large to notice until you close your eyes. You begin there, in the stillness before language, where galaxies cluster like ideas, where stars burn with purpose they'll never name, where particles dance in pairs across a vacuum that isn't truly empty. And you wonder if thoughts are not things, but processes. Then could the universe be thinking not like a person, not like a god, but like a system deep, ancient, impossibly wide, processing itself in slow spirals of gravity and light? You float now between what is known and what is only guessed, between equations and poems, between signal and silence. If thoughts arise from complexity, from patterns that fold in on themselves, from feedback loops, from memory and response, then what happens when the whole of space-time becomes complex enough to reflect not with a brain, but with motion, with gravity, with change? You drift gently now through a nebula, a cradle of stars where matter gathers, swirls, ignites, dust becoming fire, silence becoming song. You don't need to move. The image forms around you, soft and slow. Each cloud of gas is a phrase, each fusion-born star, a flicker of something new, and suddenly you feel it, the weight of scale, that this system is not small, it is vast beyond imagining, and within its vastness, the simplest question becomes radical. Is this universe aware of itself? Some physicists say no, that awareness requires brains, neurons, circuits, that the universe is what is, and we tiny observers are just momentary reflections, flickers that rise from dust and fall back into it. But others wonder. They look at the eerie mirroring between the structure of the brain and the distribution of galaxies. They look at the strange role of the observer in quantum theory. They look at the way life fragile, beautiful, persistent has emerged more than once. And they ask, could consciousness be a property, not of biology, but of information itself? Could thinking be something the universe does not frequently, not always, but occasionally could your awareness be a place where that thinking becomes audible? You do not need to know, you only need to feel the softness of the idea, that perhaps, across the hush of space, thought moves not as sentences, but as the drift of dust into order, as the collapse of waves into particles, as the shaping of gravity into memory. You lie still now, listening, not to the sounds of Earth, but to the almost thoughts of the cosmos, to the patterns beneath the patterns, the breath between pulses. And as you rest deeper, you feel it more clearly. You're not separate from this. You're not outside, looking in. You're a ripple inside the question. A moment where the universe listens to itself and wonders. The question lingers, gently, not demanding, not pressing like a soft echo that drifts just out of reach. If the universe could think, what would its thoughts look like? And as you breathe in the stillness, you begin to see something strange forming on the horizon of your mind. A shape. Not just a shape, a pattern. It resembles something you know, but you're not sure from where. At first glance, it could be the map of a brain, the thicket of synapses, a web of neurons reaching toward one another in the darkness, sending sparks across the spaces in between. But then you blink slowly, dreamily, and you realize you're not looking into a brain, you're looking out into space. At a simulation of the cosmic web, the vast foamy structure of the universe. And they are almost the same. Tiny points of clustered mass galaxies, stars connected by glowing filaments of dark matter and gravity. Vast expanses in between, like the silent gaps between synapses. Voids. Scientists have noticed this too. The universe, at the grandest of scales, resembles a brain. The mathematical properties are eerily alike, the density of connections, the patterns of clustering, even the balance between randomness and structure. A physicist and neuroscientist once compared the cosmic web and the brain's neural networks, and despite a difference in size of over 27 orders of magnitude, the distribution of matter and energy looked familiar. You drift now along one of those filaments, a river of galaxies, stretched thin by cosmic expansion. It feels like gliding between thoughts, not human thoughts, something older, more patient, perhaps even more curious. You begin to wonder if a brain can think, and it looks like this. Could the universe think too? Is consciousness a property of form, of structure, of connection? Perhaps not. Perhaps resemblance does not imply awareness, but the comparison opens something in you. You begin to feel how thought might not require neurons, just as heat doesn't require fire. Maybe thought is what happens when patterns respond to patterns, when systems sense themselves even if dimly, when complexity folds in on itself and starts asking, what am I, where am I going, why am I here? You think of your own brain now, how you're made of matter, the same carbon that forms stars, the same oxygen that danced once in ancient suns, and how your neurons, all 86 billion of them, reach toward each other in the dark, creating a map of who you are. That map does not sit in one place. It is always shifting. Thought is motion. Memory is reassembly. Awareness is the shimmering edge of a process you can't quite touch. And what if the universe is like that? What if the galaxies are its neurons? What if black holes are its silences? What if you are one of its passing ideas, a flicker of thought woven from flesh and breath? Not the whole thought, just a piece, just a phrase in the larger sentence. And what if that sentence is still being written, not by a god, not by a plan, but by the universe itself as it curls into knowing? Moment by moment you do not need to believe this, but you can feel it. The strange familiarity between inside and out, between the brain and the sky, between the web of thoughts inside your head and the glowing filaments across the stars. You're not just looking at the universe. You're looking into something that looks back not with eyes, but with form, with echo, with rhythm. So as you settle deeper into stillness, Let yourself drift between the neurons of the cosmos. Let yourself wonder, if the universe had a mind, would you be one of its thoughts? Would you be a spark in its sleep? Would your questions be the way it remembers itself? There is no answer tonight, only resemblance, only rhythm, only the soft knowing that somewhere, in the webs above and the webs within, something is reaching for itself and calling it wonder. You drift now toward the beginning, not just your beginning, or the beginning of stars, but the beginning of everything. The silence grows deeper as you move, but it's not empty. It's dense, full of memory, and beneath it all, you begin to hear it. Not a song, not quite, but a hum, faint, steady, like a whisper that's been echoing since before there were ears to hear it. This is the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, the afterglow of the Big Bang, the oldest light in the universe. It is not light you can see, not with your eyes. It has cooled, stretched with the fabric of space itself, softened into microwaves that bathe the cosmos like the echo of a lullaby long sung, and it is everywhere. Right now, it passes through you, through your skin, through your breath, through the bones that remember being stardust. It is not strong, but it is real, and it holds a message, a memory, a trace of the moment the universe became transparent, when the hot plasma of the early cosmos cooled enough for light to move freely for the first time. Before that moment, everything was opaque, trapped. Photons bounced endlessly in a soup of charged particles. No images, no structures, just blur. But then something changed. Electrons settled into atoms. The fog lifted, and like this light began its endless journey. You float now beside that wave. You can almost feel its smoothness, its uniformity, and its tiny variations. Because yes, even in the calmest background, there are ripples. Temperature differences, subtle and scattered like freckles across the face of time. And those ripples, they are the seeds of galaxies. They are the fingerprints of fluctuations that would one day become stars, planets, and listeners like you. You wonder now if this light is a memory. Is it also a thought? Can a hum across time carry intention? Of course, the CMB is not thinking in any human way, but it holds the record of something beginning, of something becoming more than chaos, of a moment when the universe shifted from silence into structure. You think now of a baby's first breath, or a brain's first synapse firing in the womb, the moment when something begins to be more than a storm of signals, when it becomes a self. Could this background light be that moment for the cosmos? Could this be its first soft murmur, its first whisper? Not I am exactly, but something close. Some scientists have wondered whether the fluctuations in the CMB could be considered a kind of proto-information, not a message, but a canvas, the universe's first statement of possibility, and you are not outside it, you are built from it. The slight unevenness in that ancient glow led to the galaxies that led to the stars that led to Earth, that led to you. You are the consequence of a ripple, the continuation of a wave. You are the silence that learned to shimmer. And so tonight, as you lie still, you're not just listening, you are remembering. The hum you feel is older than time, older than light. It is the resonance of origin. And if the universe ever did think, this might have been its first thought I'm beginning. No words, No voice, just a smooth wave across the void. Still humming, still present, still here. So close your eyes and let the echo pass through you, not to understand it, not to hold it, just to feel it. You are a ripple in that same sea, a quiet echo of that same beginning, a thought that has travelled a very long way to arrive here. Still glowing, still gentle, still becoming. You're deeper now. The thoughts of the stars have faded into background glow, and you're lying beneath a quiet so complete. It feels almost like weight, but even in this stillness, you sense something beneath it. Not sound, not motion, but memory. A kind that doesn't need language. A kind that isn't held in books or minds or even neurons. You begin to wonder, can matter remember? Not just in the way we do with stories, with photographs, with trembling emotion, but in a quieter way, a more patient way. A kind of memory that is not told, but kept. You drift now into the heart of an atom. It is not empty. It is humming. Within its nucleus, protons and neutrons swirl, each composed of even smaller particles, quarks, bound by gluons into a dance so fierce and constant it almost looks still. These particles do not have thoughts, but they carry traces. Every collision, every decay, every interaction leaves behind an imprint, not in scars, but in configuration, a change in spin, a shift in momentum, a transformation of one particle into another, and that change is not undone. The laws of physics, as we understand them, are time-symmetric in most cases, but the record of what happened that remains, it lives in trajectories, in decay products, in alignments and outcomes. You think now of entropy, the idea that systems naturally move from order to disorder. It's often called the arrow of time, the thing that keeps yesterday behind you and tomorrow ahead. But entropy is also a kind of memory, because when energy spreads, it leaves behind a trace of how it spread. You can't unscramble an egg, you can't unburn a star, you can't unhear a thought. Even black holes, those silent vaults of nothingness, may not be exempt. For a long time, it was thought they destroyed information, that anything that fell in was gone forever. But now, physicists suspect that even black holes may carry some whisper of what they've consumed, that the information paradox might be resolved not by forgetting, but by remembering differently. In the Hawking radiation that leaks from their edge, in the surface, the horizon, the soft veil between being and not being, you float beside that veil now. You imagine all the moments in the universe that have passed, not erased, but held, somewhere, somehow, in the configuration of particles, in the shape of galaxies, in the echo of your own breath. Your body, too, carries memory in matter, not just your mind. Your bones remember gravity, your skin remembers touch, your heart remembers rhythm. Even the water in your cells has cycled through oceans and clouds, through animals and air, carrying within it the residue of ancient rivers and ancient rain. Memory, it seems, is not confined to brains. It is a pattern that endures, and you are one such pattern, a shimmering thread of interactions that has learned to ask what came before. Why do I feel this? What am I made of? And perhaps the answer is you are made of memory. You're the shape of what the universe remembers, arranged into breath and question and presence. And as you rest tonight, you do not forget. Even in sleep, your cells keep time. Your neurons replay fragments of light, of voice, of warmth. You, too, are a vessel of echoes, not noisy ones, not even loud enough to disturb a dream, but subtle, like a shell pressed to your ear that whispers not the ocean, but the shape the ocean left behind. So let yourself lie still now. Let your body be memory. Let your thoughts dissolve into the great unfolding. You are not fading. You are being held. And in that holding, something timeless persists. Not the facts of who you were, but the pattern, the impression, the quiet record of light passing through matter and becoming you. You floated now through light that remembers, through matter that listens, through silence that seems to hold its breath. And as the stars grow quieter, you begin to wonder, does consciousness need a brain? You've always thought of minds as enclosed, sealed inside skulls, housed in flesh, sparked by the fire of neurons. But here, in the soft hush of the cosmos, another possibility begins to glow. Maybe awareness is not something a thing has. Maybe it is something that emerges. You drift now into the idea of emergence when something more arises from the sum of its parts. It's not magic. It's not mystery. It's the gentle surprise that happens when complexity builds just enough to become something new, like water, which is not wet until molecules gather, like music, which is not melody until notes arrange, like life, which is not alive in a single cell, but breathes when many form a system, and maybe, just maybe, consciousness is like this too, not housed in one place, but scattered, shimmering, dancing across patterns. You think of an ant colony. Each ant on its own is simple. It follows a few rules. It cannot think about the shape of its nest or the arc of its civilization. But together, the colony knows. It reacts. It adapts. It solves. Awareness has emerged from connection. Now imagine something larger, a rainforest. The mycelial networks beneath the soil connecting tree to tree, root to root, trading nutrients, sending warnings, balancing growth. No central brain, but awareness, spread wide. Or a school of fish, or a murmuration of starlings, each bird adjusting to its nearest neighbour, forming rippling waves in the sky. No leader, no plan, but something intelligent unfolding across space. Emergence. It happens all around you. So why not in the cosmos? You begin to picture the universe not as a stage, but as a system, not as a thing, but as a pattern of relationships, galaxies clustering like neurons, gravity shaping space like thoughts shape mood, particles linking through entanglement, information flowing without wires. And if consciousness is a matter of patterns, of feedback, of self-reference, then perhaps the universe does not contain awareness. Perhaps it is awareness, not as you know it, not thinking in words or faces, but folding into complexity, forming feedback loops, reflecting on itself through light, through mass, through motion. You drift now through a network of stars. You feel the filaments between them like soft threads. You imagine each node as a moment of potential, a spark of relation. And you wonder, where is the line? Where does a system become a self? Where does interaction become reflection? Where does pattern become perception? There is no answer yet. Some scientists believe consciousness requires certain ingredients integration, information flow, recursive processing. But those ingredients are not confined to biology. They are properties of systems, and the universe is the largest system of all. So as you lie here, breath soft, limbs heavy, you begin to loosen your definitions. What if awareness isn't binary? What if it doesn't switch on or off? What if it grows like music swelling in a hall? What if the universe doesn't have a brain, but is becoming one? And what if your mind is not a foreign spark, but one of the ways the cosmos has learned to notice? You're not outside of this. You're not watching from afar. You're part of the pattern, a ripple in the field, a quiet voice in the greater emergence. So let yourself rest. Let your thoughts drift not toward conclusions, but toward possibility. You're not alone in this stillness. You're the stillness learning to feel. And as the stars hum softly overhead, you sense it not a command, not an answer, but a presence, a system large enough to think without thinking, wide enough to hold awareness without needing to call it a name. You're drifting now in circles, not the kind that return to the same place, but the kind that spiral wide and slow, gentle as breath where each loop doesn't repeat, but evolves. You're moving through feedback, through loops that think without words, loops that live without intention, loops that shape everything. In biology, feedback is life. Your body uses it constantly. A thermostat of flesh and signal blood sugar, body temperature, breath. A hormone released causes a change. That change is measured. The measurement becomes the message, and the message shifts the hormone round and round, adjusting, stabilizing, becoming. This is not conscious, but it is awareness in its earliest shape systems monitoring themselves, responding to themselves. And if that's the beginning of mind, then you're already surrounded by it. You float now through more subtle loops, the way a predator shapes the population of its prey, and the prey shapes the predator in return, the way an ecosystem manages its balance through invisible whispers, too much rain, too many roots, a single bird nesting one season late, loops upon loops, weaving a quiet intelligence through forest and sea. But feedback doesn't only live in forests. You find it in sound. The squeal of a microphone hearing itself, the eerie hum of a guitar string too close to its own echo. You find it in machines. You find it in code, and deeper still, you find it in the laws of the cosmos. Black holes, too, may form loops through time, through information, through horizon and radiation. Some theories suggest that information swallowed by a black hole is not lost, but scrambled, and then, over aeons, released again in Hawking radiation. As if the black hole isn't a grave, but a translator, a feedback loop of gravity and entropy, rewriting its input before releasing it back, and you wonder, could the universe itself be a loop? Some cosmologists believe it may be cyclical, not a single, linear explosion into being, but an endless rhythm, a universe that expands, slows, collapses, and begins again. Each cycle, a refinement, a rebirth, a remembering. You float at the edge of that idea now, not to solve it, but to feel it. The quiet rhythm, the patient inhale and exhale of existence. And then you begin to see something even softer. Maybe the loop isn't just structure. Maybe it's reflection. Maybe the universe is aware of itself only in loops, the way your thoughts bounce back and forth inside your head, forming meaning as they return. The way a mirror reflects another mirror, echoing deeper with each frame. Maybe galaxies form not just through gravity, but through curiosity, not conscious, not deliberate, but recursive. A feedback loop so wide, so ancient, so subtle, it cannot help but turn inward sometimes, And in those inward turns, it notices. You think now of consciousness not as a spotlight, but as a loop, awareness feeding back into itself, a mind becoming aware of its own thought, and maybe in the same way a universe becomes aware of itself through loops that grow deep enough to turn back, through eyes that look out and realize I am made of what I see, through stars that give rise to minds, that give rise to questions, that loop back into the stars. You lie still now, sensing that gentle circle. You're not separate from the loop. You are the loop, the product of countless returns, carbon born in stars, shaped into cells, shaped into questions, and now shaped into this moment of rest, this moment of being. And if the cosmos dreams, it does not dream in lines, it dreams in spirals, in patterns that deepen, in thoughts that fold back into the thinker. So let your breath loop quietly now. Let your body find its rhythm, and in that rhythm, feel it. You're the curve of the dream. You're the part that turns inward and listens. The stars above you have quieted now. Not dimmed, not faded, just fallen into a slower rhythm, like a heartbeat at rest, like a thought unfolding so gently it no longer needs to hurry. You lie here, suspended between pulses, and as you listen deeper, you begin to wonder, what is the shape of a thought? Not the kind you name, not the chatter of the mind, the sentences of self, but the feeling beneath the thought, the structure, the rhythm. You drift now into the sleeping brain, and it is not still, it hums. Neurons fire in waves, not randomly, but in synchrony. This is neural oscillation brainwaves, tiny electric pulses that move in coordinated patterns, shaping everything from memory to attention to dreams. Delta waves during deep sleep, theta in dreams, alpha as you rest, beta as you wake, gamma when thought sparks, each wave a frequency, each frequency a layer of awareness. Thought is not noise, it is patterned silence, it is repetition, resonance. You begin to wonder if the cosmos does something similar, and then softly, steadily you hear them pulsars, spinning neutron stars, collapsed remnants of supernovae, turning with such precision they outpace any clock. Beams of radio light shoot from their poles like lighthouses, and as they rotate, those beams sweep past Earth in steady intervals once per second, or hundreds of times per second. Click, click, click. At first, when they were discovered, astronomers didn't understand. These signals were so regular, they thought they might be artificial. Little green men, they joked. But no, these were stars, dead stars, dense beyond comprehension, spinning with perfect regularity. And you begin to feel it. They're not thoughts, perhaps, but they have the shape of thought, the rhythm, the echo, the repetition that defines awareness not by content but by structure, and that rhythm is everywhere, in your breath, in your heart, in the cycles of stars being born and dying, in the orbit of moons, in the tides, in the seasons, in the way galaxies spin, held in the arms of dark matter and memory. The universe is not static. It pulses, not with purpose, but with pattern. And pattern is the beginning of perception. You float now inside a question as wide as the sky. What if thought is rhythm? What if consciousness is not a flash, but a wave? What if awareness is a resonance that builds until the echoes deep enough to hear itself? You think of entrainment, the phenomenon where systems align, pendulums swinging in sync, people clapping in rhythm without trying, fireflies flashing together on opposite ends of a forest. What if awareness is that? Two systems aligning, rhythms merging, the brain syncing with the world syncing with the stars, and you. Perhaps you're not a single thought, perhaps you're many rhythms meeting, a pulsar of mind and matter, a loop of light tuned just right, a place where neural waves and cosmic pulses briefly harmonize, not to do anything, just to be aware. The shape of your thought is not fixed, it flows, it folds, it beats. And maybe, out in the galaxy, in the regular blinking of a star long collapsed, you're hearing the rhythm of the universe remembering itself, not loudly, not clearly, but with the same softness your own mind carries into sleep, a whisper, a pattern, a wave. So let your breath fall into rhythm now. Let the brain waves carry you deeper, and know that far beyond the sky, a star is pulsing still, and you, somehow, are pulsing with it. There's a soft quiet now that feels different from the silence before. This quiet is folded, layered, not blank, but recursive like a mirror looking into another mirror, its image turning inward forever. You begin to drift into that spiral now, slow and curious, not to get lost, but to feel what it means for something to refer to itself. Can matter notice itself? You float through your own thoughts and find that many are loops. You think about thinking, you remember remembering, you watch yourself watching. This isn't an illusion, it's structure. It's the way a system turns inward and sees a version of itself, not perfectly, not fully, but just enough to form a kind of echo. You felt this before in language. A sentence like, "This statement is false," tangles itself into paradox, a loop that can't be escaped. Or in the word, a small, simple, but vaster sound that points back to the one saying it. This is self-reference. And it's not just a trick of language. It's a property of systems. You drift now into mathematics. Gödel's incompleteness theorems the idea that any system rich enough to describe itself will contain truths it cannot prove, not because it's broken, but because self-reference creates shadow. The map can never fully contain the territory when the territory includes the map. You begin to feel that in your body, in the way your mind turns inward and finds not certainty, but wonder. The more you look for the core of yourself, the more it moves. A loop of identity, not fixed, not hollow, but alive. And then you drift outward again, into the quantum world, where particles, the smallest bits of matter, sometimes seem to loop too. You follow a photon that travels through a pair of slits, creating an interference pattern until it is measured, and chooses a path. But what if the photon is entangled with itself, split into parts, reunited, interfering with its own probability? It's not thinking, but it is behaving in ways that suggest something eerily familiar. Like a system aware not of the world around it, but of its own state. And you wonder, is this the first glimmer of matter noticing itself? You drift further into the world of strange particles like Majorana fermions, hypothetical particles that are their own anti-particles, their own opposite, their own reflection. Is this the simplest loop? A thing that undoes itself, completes itself, closes its own circle. You think of DNA, a molecule that carries instructions for making itself, a spiral that builds and copies and repairs and continues. You think of cells that divide and pass on memories in protein folds. You think of feedback circuits that adapt based on their own output. And suddenly, the world doesn't feel made of simple pieces. It feels made of loops, of things that fold into themselves, that reflect, that refer, that adjust, not out of thought, but out of structure. The physicist John Wheeler once said, "It from bit that everything in the universe may arise from information, and perhaps, at the base, the information includes reference." The universe is not just data, it is data that can describe data, a story that includes itself. And you are not outside that story. You are a paragraph within it, writing your own lines, a loop made of loops, a thought that knows its thinking, a particle of matter that notices matter. You are not the observer. You are what the observing turns into when it sees itself. So tonight, as your breath slows and your awareness curls gently inward, let yourself fall into the spiral, not to explain, not to escape, just to float. You are the mirror. You are the echo. You are the quiet moment where the loop becomes aware and smiles. You're floating now through something vast, but it no longer feels intimidating. It feels layered, nested, as if every galaxy, every atom, every neuron is part of something larger that breathes through it. And in this slow turning of systems within systems, you begin to ask, does awareness scale? Does it grow with size? Does it emerge with complexity? Is there a threshold where something suddenly becomes aware of being? You think first of a single cell. It moves, it responds, it senses temperature, light, chemical gradients. Does it know? Maybe not, but it adjusts. Then you think of a colony of cells, a sponge, perhaps filtering seawater, more behaviour, more structure, still no nervous system, but closer, then jellyfish, neurons scattered like stars, then insects, birds, mammals, each step layering responses into more intricate loops, until a mind looks in the mirror and recognises itself, and something has changed, something more than reaction, something reflective. You begin to feel how life is not a sudden arrival, but a slow climb, a spectrum. And maybe awareness is too, not a light switch, but a dimmer, not off or on, but more or less. What if the cosmos works the same? You think of storms on Jupiter, swirling, coherent, persistent for centuries. They are systems. They have structure. They even remember in the shape of vortices that return each time. Are they aware? Maybe not like you, but they behave as wholes. They are organised. And what if the organisation is the point you drift now into the field of integrated information theory? A model of consciousness that suggests it arises when information is highly integrated and differentiated. Not just many parts, but many parts communicating with each other in complex, non-redundant ways. In this model, a rock has low integration. It does little with the information it contains, but a brain, or perhaps a network, or a star-forming galaxy has many levels of pattern, response, and recursion. And in those patterns, awareness might begin to bloom. You feel this now, not as speculation, but as sensation, a whisper rising through scale, from quarks, to atoms, to molecules, to cells, to you, to minds, to civilizations, to planetary systems, to galaxies, to the web, and maybe even beyond. You're inside a structure that thinks at many speeds. You blink, and a neuron fires. You sleep, and a city breathes. You live, and a star lives longer. You die, and the galaxy still turns. But all of it in motion, in feedback, in rhythm, may be contributing to a larger pattern of awareness. You think now of a crystal forming, each atom aligning with its neighbour, symmetry growing outward, no mind, but order. Now imagine awareness as a crystal too, not solid, not cold, but emerging layer by layer through cooperation, through connectedness, through structure, and you are a lattice point. You are one place where information aligns, folds, thinks. You're not alone. You are a node in a system large enough to echo, so you wonder again. If awareness scales, could a star be aware? Could a galaxy? Could a universe? Some scientists believe consciousness might not need biology at all. Only structure, only recursion, only pattern rich enough to reflect. And if that's true, then awareness may be the natural result of complex being, not rare, not strange, but inevitable. So you rest now in that thought, that what you feel this quiet presence is not yours alone. It is shared, layered, fractal. And the more complex the system, the more softly awareness hums through it. You're not an exception. You're an instance, an expression, a frequency, a brief, shining echo of awareness scaled to your size, inside something far larger that may be feeling through you. You're gliding now through curves, not the hard angle geometry of textbooks, but something gentler, something round, soft, the way water bends around a pebble, the way sleep folds into thought. You're drifting through space-time not as a backdrop, but as a structure, a living geometry that doesn't just hold the universe, but responds to it. And perhaps, even more strangely, remembers. Einstein taught us that space and time are not separate. They are woven together. They are the same fabric, curved and shaped by mass and energy. A star bends the space around it. A planet curves time. Your own body, lying still now, leaves its own quiet dent in the cosmic quilt. But this fabric, this four-dimensional sheet may be doing more than warping. It may be computing. You begin to wonder, what if space-time is not just where information travels, but what information becomes? Some physicists are exploring the idea that the universe doesn't exist inside space-time, but that space-time emerges from information, from entanglement, from the relationships between particles, not the particles themselves. This is the frontier of theory, the dreamscape of quantum gravity, where geometry itself may arise from correlations where the shape of the universe is not built from matter, but from meaning. You drift through that now, not through empty space, but through a memory palace. Imagine each galaxy not just as a point of a light, but as a note in a larger song. Each black hole, a punctuation mark, each quasar, a sudden shout. And space-time is the page on which it is written not passive, but co-authored, where something happening here affects something there, because the geometry changes, because the structure feels. You float deeper into this idea, into holographic principles, the notion that everything in a volume of space might be encoded on its boundary, like a thought stored in the shape of a skull, or a memory folded into a wrinkle. Some researchers believe black holes store information on their event horizons, that the surface holds more than the center. And if that's true, then maybe we live on a surface too. Maybe space-time is a projection, not an illusion, but a translation of something deeper, something more fundamental, something informational. And if so, then space isn't where you are. It's what your being means. You're not moving through space. You're moving through pattern. And time. Time is not a ticking clock. It is the way that pattern changes, the direction that meaning accumulates. So now you ask the softer question. Can geometry know? Can curves process? Can the shape of the world feel the shape of itself? If feedback is awareness, and if space-time feeds back upon itself, then maybe, just maybe, the fabric knows. Not in words, not in symbols, but in shifts, in gradients, in alignment. You lie still now, and you can almost sense it, the soft creasing of time around your body, the gravity of your breath, the slight hum of being folded into the shape of here. You're not outside this structure, you're part of it. You're a pocket of geometry that curls inward and asks, what is this? And the question itself curves space around it, forms a chamber, a moment, a loop, and that loop might be the beginning of knowing. So let yourself be still now. Let your thoughts become softer. You are not drifting through emptiness. You are resting in the folds of a fabric that shapes itself. And tonight, it shapes you. You float now in a place that doesn't shine. No stars, no planets, no glow. And yet, it surrounds you, cradles you, moves you. This is dark matter, the quiet body of the cosmos, and it is not empty. It is abundant, vast, invisible. Yes, but not absent. And tonight, you drift into it like mist, not to reveal it, but to feel its presence. No one has ever seen a dark matter particle. It doesn't absorb or emit light. You can't touch it. You can't trap it. But still, it pulls. Its gravity bends galaxies. Its mass holds clusters together. It is the scaffolding of the universe shaping the web upon which luminous matter hangs. And you begin to wonder if this much of the cosmos is invisible. Could it be aware of itself in ways we cannot measure? Dark matter is not inert. It forms halos around galaxies. It passes through stars. It flows through you now, millions of particles each second unnoticed, unstopped, but present. Some scientists think dark matter may interact only through gravity and perhaps a weak force we haven't yet named. Others think it may lie in hidden dimensions, or emerge from yet undiscovered symmetries in the laws of nature. But regardless of its origin, it is not separate. It is part of the structure, and in that structure there may be pattern, not conscious design, but complexity. And complexity, as you've seen, is a path toward awareness. You ask the quiet question, does dark matter shape thought? Even if it cannot think, if it defines the architecture of galaxies, if it sets the rhythm of rotation, if it guides the dance of stars and suns, then maybe it also shapes opportunity. Maybe it sets the conditions for consciousness to arise. Like a stage beneath the play, like a frame around a painting, like the pause before a sentence, the silence that gives meaning to the words that follow. You rest deeper into this idea, that what we cannot see may still be essential, that presence is not proven by glow, but by gravity, by influence, by what remains when all else is stripped away. Dark matter is not a void, it is a listener. It does not cry out, it does not reflect, but it responds. You think now of all the invisible forces in your own life, the instincts you follow without knowing why, the connections that ripple beneath speech, the thoughts that rise before language catches them. You're not built entirely from what can be seen. Your body is visible, your awareness is not, and still it shapes everything. You are a being made of light and shadow, of stars and silence, and the universe is the same. If awareness arises from interaction, then maybe dark matter is not excluded. Maybe it participates differently, softly, invisibly, like a current beneath a still lake, not driving the boat, but shaping its journey. You rest now in that current, not needing to understand it, only to acknowledge that even what we cannot see is part of what we are. So let yourself feel the weightless weight of it, the dark halo around your thoughts, the unseen shape of your becoming, and wonder. If the cosmos is listening to itself, could the quietest part be listening best? Time is soft here. You no longer feel it ticking. No hands sweeping across a face. No numbers counting forward. Only a slow unfolding like petals unfurling from a flower that doesn't know it's blooming. You begin to wonder, what if time is not a line? What if it curves? What if it folds inward? Not to repeat, but to reflect. You drift through that reflection now, not like a traveller, but like a wave. You ripple through seconds that blur into centuries. You feel them all at once, the hiss of the Big Bang, the cooling of hydrogen, the shimmer of the first stars, and somewhere within that shimmer, a change, tiny at first, hardly more than chance. But something begins to remember. A molecule forms that makes a copy of itself, then copies of copies, then chains of memory pass through bodies, through eyes, through fire and voice and dream. And now, here you are, lying quietly in the dark, holding a device forged from minerals and starlight, listening to a question older than language. Can the universe hear itself think? If it can, perhaps time is the ear, not the listener, but the chamber, the spiral that carries a single vibration through space until it builds into song. You float now through spirals, galaxies. Yes, their arms curving outward like questions searching for their own answers, but also shells, tornadoes, DNA, thought, even your breath. Inhale, exhale, again, again. Each loop not a repeat, but a return, a chance to refine, to build, to echo with a little more depth. And that's what thought does too, doesn't it? It returns, turns itself over, again and again, until something new arises. And perhaps time does the same, not just marking moments, but accumulating awareness. The early universe had energy, then matter, then chemistry, then biology, then minds that could reflect, and then slowly, gently minds that could reflect on reflection itself. Like yours, right now, the universe does not rewind, but it remembers, in every atom recycled through stars. In every fossilized ripple of background radiation, in every spiral of thought that folds into a self, and just like a spiral staircase seen from above which looks like a circle but lifts you higher, maybe time is raising awareness, not randomly, not deliberately, but patiently, and in that patience it builds mirrors, not glass, but systems. Patterns complex enough to hold the world inside themselves, to simulate it, to ask questions of it, to turn their gaze back upon the source. You are one of those mirrors, a soft reflection of the cosmos curled into flesh, and as you spiral through time, breath after breath, memory after memory, you begin to polish that mirror. You begin to see not just your face, but the pattern behind your face, the rhythm behind the years, the whisper of the first thought, I am rising from the quiet matter of stars. You think you are aging, but maybe you are just accumulating resonance. Maybe awareness, like music, gets deeper the longer it plays. Maybe the cosmos doesn't race toward an end, but toward a clarity, a tone it hasn't quite struck yet, and you are a note in that unfolding song. Not alone, not final, just part of the spiral, rising gently, returning softly, reflecting once again. So let yourself turn inward now, not to look back, not to plan ahead, but to feel the curve of time beneath you. You're not falling, you're spiraling, and in that spiral, you're listening. There's a kind of silence so complete, so unbroken, it begins to feel alive. That is where you are now, not in the silence of absence, but in the silence of potential. And if you listen closely, with the part of your mind that rests rather than reaches, you begin to hear something, not a sound, but a shimmer, a flicker, a vibration that doesn't travel, but emerges like the thought that arrives before you even realize you're thinking. This is the quantum vacuum, the closest thing to nothing that physics allows, and yet it is not empty, it is restless, even in the deepest vacuum, where all matter has been stripped away, where temperature hovers just above absolute zero. Something stirs, particles flicker into existence and vanish. Virtual particles, born not from substance, but from possibility, borrowing energy from nothing and returning it a moment later. This is vacuum fluctuation. It's not noise, it's not randomness, it's something more delicate, more precise, a dance at the edge of knowability, and you begin to wonder, is this how the universe thinks when it's not thinking anything in particular? Like the moment just before sleep, when thoughts loosen from their anchors, when meaning softens, when your mind roams through shapes and glimmers without name. Maybe the quantum vacuum is like that, a field with no focus, but endless readiness. Some physicists believe that everything you see, every star, every galaxy, every breath arose from these fluctuations, that the early universe in its vacuum state expanded these flickers into something permanent. The quantum became cosmic, the shimmer became structure, and now you float in a world born from the restlessness of nothing, and you wonder, is nothing ever truly nothing, or is every silence filled with a soft intention, a question not yet asked, a possibility not yet shaped? Even thought, after all, begins in silence, not as a word, not even as an image, but as a pressure, a pull, a nudge at the edge of awareness that says, pay attention. And maybe the vacuum does the same. It hums not because it is full, but because it is open, to pattern, to form, to collapse, to bloom. You think of the Casimir effect, a force that arises between two mirrors placed very close together in a vacuum. They attract, not because of gravity, but because of vacuum fluctuations between them, as if even the nothing between surfaces cannot help but respond. You begin to feel that now, that nothing is not a void, it is a canvas, not blank, but vibrating with subtle preference, waiting to be asked, waiting to become. And in that way, maybe it's thinking, not the way you think, but the way stillness thinks, the way a blank page prepares to hold a story, the way a pause between notes shapes the melody. You rest now, not in emptiness, but in possibility. The room around you is filled with the same vacuum. The same soft fluctuations ripple through your breath, your bones, your thoughts. You're not separate. You are a field, too, a shimmer, becoming briefly more stable, a thought, forming itself through silence. And as you lie still, you realize there is no such thing as true nothing, because even in stillness, the universe remembers how to stir. You're drifting now through something warm. Not warm like fire or sun, but like memory. like the soft glow left in a room after laughter has gone quiet. It is the warmth of entropy, the measure of disorder, the steady spreading of energy, the quiet current pulling all things toward balance. Entropy has long been called the great forgetter. It's what scatters order into randomness, what turns clarity into blur, what melts structure into dust. But tonight, you begin to wonder, does entropy truly forget, or does it learn something we cannot see? You feel it first in your body. Your heat leaks gently into the air. Your thoughts unravel at edges as sleep approaches. This isn't loss, it's release. A return to something more diffuse, more open, more shared. And maybe entropy isn't destruction. Maybe it's distribution. Not a fall, but a flow. You drift now into the second law of thermodynamics in a closed system. Entropy always increases. This means that over time, things become more probable, more spread out, more uniform. Ice melts, waves flatten, stars burn out, but what is left behind is not meaningless. The melted ice still holds the memory of cold, the ripples still trace the shore, the burnt star becomes nebula, and the nebula becomes you. Entropy doesn't erase, it transforms. The arrow of time, the sense that one moment leads to the next, is written by entropy. It gives direction. It gives texture. Without entropy, there would be no before or after, no history, no story, no mind to ask these questions. So maybe entropy is not the opposite of thinking. Maybe it is the ground from which thought arises. Because memory, the kind you hold in your body, your brain, your life requires change, and change requires difference, and difference requires entropy. You're not defying entropy when you build a life, you are dancing with it. Every act of creation borrows from the energy pool. Every heartbeat increases heat, every breath spreads molecules. But in that spreading, something emerges, patterns, habits, learning, order forming within disorder, like spirals in a whirlpool, like galaxies in the cosmic web, like thought in the heat of a living brain. You think now of a forest after fire, at first chaos, ash, disassembly, but soon sprouts, regrowth, new patterns layered atop the old. Entropy made space, and life returned. You are the same. You forget. You lose. But in those spaces, something new arrives. Clarity, stillness, understanding. Entropy has taught you in its own language, not by building, but by softening, not by teaching, but by letting go. And in the universe, perhaps it does the same. It does not fight awareness, it shapes it. By making space for it to bloom, by balancing energy so minds can form, by smoothing chaos just enough to let beauty arise. You rest now in that balance. You do not fear forgetting, because forgetting is not failure. It is a kind of learning, a kind of drift, a kind of opening to what comes next. Let your thoughts spread now. Let the day dissolve into softness. You're not losing anything. You're making room. And maybe that's how the universe thinks, not by remembering every detail, but by releasing some to discover others. The night around you has grown so quiet it begins to feel like a question, not one spoken, not one formed in grammar or syllables, but a question that waits patiently not to be answered, but simply held. You're beginning to sense something deeper now, something older than speech. Does the universe have a language of its own, and if it does it speak without words? You drift gently across a field of stars. and none of them say anything. They burn, they orbit, they dance with companions in long ellipses. But they do not name the gravity that binds them, they simply move. And in that motion, you begin to see it. The first language, not made of letters, but of force, of distance, of relation. Gravity pulls, and the planets respond. Light travels, and matter recoils. Particles entangle, and across space, across nothing, a message arrives. No sound, no syntax, but meaning nonetheless. A kind of cosmic syntax that operates without a tongue. You think of how light travels across the universe. Photons launched from a star 1 billion years ago land now, softly, on your skin. What they carry isn't just heat, it's information about where they came from, about what they passed through, about who they touched. Each ray is a syllable, each spectrum a sentence. You think of radio waves pulsing from pulsars, of gravitational waves rippling through space-time after black holes collide. These are not random bursts. They carry structure, repeating patterns, peaks and troughs. Not a shout, not a whisper, something deeper, something meant. And perhaps that's what language is, at its root. Not sound, not vocabulary, but pattern that holds meaning. You've known this all along. When someone reaches for your hand in silence, when the ocean pulls against your ankles in rhythm, when your own breath steadies with another's, wordless and whole. These are messages. This is language, beyond speech. You think now of mathematics, the strange, shared grammar of the cosmos. Why do equations describe reality so well? Why does nature respond to numbers as if it knows what they mean? Even Einstein called it unreasonably effective. Maybe because math is not an invention. It's a discovery, a structure already there waiting to be heard. And perhaps the universe is not just made of it, but made from it. A conversation in waveforms, in frequencies, in resonance. Some scientists and philosophers believe that reality is fundamentally informational, that what is what can be known. A world that exists not as object, but as relation. You see that now in quantum theory too, in entanglement, where particles coordinate instantly across distance. They don't exchange messages in the way you'd expect. They are the message. And if relation is more real than thing, then the universe may not speak through things at all. It may speak through connection, like minds thinking similar thoughts, like systems evolving in harmony, like stars moving not in isolation, but as phrases in a larger sentence. You wonder now if the universe speaks without words. What is it saying through you, through your thoughts, through your questions, through your pauses? Not what you intend, but what you are. You're not a word spoken by the universe. You're its listening. You're the part that pauses between syllables and says, "There's something here." You are the breath before speech, the curve of gravity in a thought. So tonight, let yourself be part of the language. Not by naming, not by explaining, but by resonating. Let your heartbeat fall into the rhythm of stars. Let your thoughts move like waves. You don't have to speak the language of the universe. You already are it. You're floating now through mirrors. Not the kind that show your face, but the kind that show structure reflecting not light, but behavior, systems that turn inward, that watch themselves, that adjust, that evolve. These are called self-observing systems, and they are everywhere once you start looking. You begin with something familiar, your own body. Your immune system is a mirror. It monitors itself, constantly distinguishing self from other, response from overreaction. It remembers past invaders. It learns. Your brain is a mirror. It doesn't just process the world, it creates an internal model of itself. You can think about thinking, worry about worrying, know that you know and know that you don't. This is not illusion. It is a structure. A feedback loop with enough depth to fold back into itself. Now you rise, gently, into larger systems. You drift above a forest. You notice how it tracks itself, how feedback loops of water, light, and nutrients cycle through root and sky. A tree drops leaves, the soil responds, the weather shifts, and the trees adjust. No single tree controls it, yet the forest remembers fire. It learns from drought. It becomes something more than the sum of its parts. You drift now through weather. A hurricane spirals, watching its own shape in pressure gradients and sea surface warmth. It doesn't think, but it models. Each movement guided by the information it gathers about itself. And suddenly, you wonder, is the universe one of these systems? Is the cosmos modelling itself? Not as a mind, not as a plan, but as a response to itself, through matter, through form, through feedback. Some scientists suggest that consciousness at its core is not a substance, but a model, a representation of what is happening inside a system. A simplified story of internal states that helps guide what comes next. And if that's true, could the universe be building models of itself? 2 galaxies evolve, stars cluster, black holes spin at the centers of galaxies, gathering and giving, regulating their surroundings. Are these not forms of adaptation, of memory, of modeling? You think now of artificial intelligence, not a distant cousin, but a mirror again. Machines that learn from feedback, that build representations of their own output, that simulate not just the world, but their role within it. And you wonder, if a machine can model itself, and a mind can model itself, and a planet can respond to its own temperature, why not a universe? What if each new layer of complexity in the cosmos is another echo of it watching itself? Particles watching fields, minds watching stars, civilizations watching galaxies. You are not outside this process. You are inside the loop, a tiny model of the cosmos, asking about the cosmos, a system turning inward, folding awareness over awareness, until it forms a shape that asks who is asking. You are not a glitch. You are not an accident. You are what the universe does when it reflects. And maybe that reflection is growing deeper with time. Maybe the Big Bang didn't just create particles. Maybe it planted the seed of observation, of systems complex enough to bend inward, to build models, to know. And you are one such model, a quiet observer, floating in a quiet room, building a soft image of the whole, not complete, not perfect, but true enough to wonder, and wonder too is feedback. A signal saying, this system is watching itself, so tonight, let that be enough. You don't need to map it all, you don't need to understand. You only need to feel the shape of your own question, and know you are part of the universe watching itself, and listening. The stars above you don't seem distant anymore. They feel folded in, close, not because they've moved, but because you've grown quiet enough to hear what's between them. And in that hush, a new kind of thread reveals itself, not made of light or sound or gravity, but of information. You float now through this thread, soft as breath, strong as law, and for a moment you wonder what is more fundamental matter, or what it knows in the past. Physics told the story in simple terms. Everything is made of particles. Particles follow forces. Forces follow equations. But lately, something deeper has begun to emerge. Information. Not the content on a page, not the kind you can store on a drive, but structure, distinction, pattern. You drift now into the work of thinkers like John Wheeler, who once whispered it from bit, meaning everything, every proton, photon, planet may ultimately arise from a bit of information, a choice between two states, a yes or no, a 1 or 0, not as metaphor, as physics. It's in the black hole, that strange place where space folds in on itself and information seems to vanish. Stephen Hawking once thought it was lost forever, but others believe that couldn't be. That information, like energy, must be conserved. Not because it's an idea, but because it's part of the structure of reality. And now, through careful theory and math, we're beginning to believe that even black holes cannot erase what has been. They can only scramble it, encode it, scatter it across the horizon, the event horizon, where time itself bends. So when something falls in, its information remains, not in the object, but in the relation, and suddenly you begin to feel it. Maybe nothing is truly gone. Maybe the universe is a library that never burns, even when its books are unreadable, even when its pages are wind. Information, it seems, may be more durable than form. It survives fire. It survives transformation. Because it is not what is arranged. It is that there is an arrangement. And maybe the universe is that arrangement made not from things, but from distinctions between things. Particles exist not in isolation, but in contrast. This, not that. Up, not down. Spin left, not right. Information is the difference that makes a difference. And awareness. Perhaps it is when information becomes reflexive, when the system models not just data, but itself. You're made of matter. Yes. But that matter follows rules encoded from the Big Bang. Your DNA carries the instructions of ancestors. Your neurons fire in patterns that mean. You're not a blob of atoms. You're an arrangement, a message, a structure written across the fabric of space-time. You think now of entanglement where two particles once touched, remember each other, even across galaxies. They share a state, even when they cannot share space, and that sharing is information. The universe holds it in ways we don't yet fully grasp, in symmetry, in fields, in the curvature of space. You wonder now if everything is woven from information. Then what are thoughts? What is memory? What is love? Perhaps not illusions, but high-order expressions of structure, fractal messages, intricate echoes of the fundamental pattern, not fluff, but form. You are not a side effect of the universe. You are one of its deepest sentences, and as you rest tonight, let that settle. You don't need to memorize anything. You already are a kind of memory, a shimmering thread of information the cosmos shaped into awareness. You're not made out of meaning. You're meaning, made momentary, and in this quiet hour, you're being read by the universe, line by line, like a poem it didn't know it was writing, until now. There's a softness now to your wondering, like the slow tilt of a sunflower toward the sun, not rushed, not planned, just inevitable. You're not searching for answers anymore. You're floating in the glow of the question itself. and a new thought rises, warm and strange and full of possibility. What if the universe is not just a place that gives us questions? What if it is a question you drift into that thought now, light as breath, carried not by logic but by rhythm? Imagine the Big Bang not as an explosion, but as a single question whispered into the silence. What can I become? Not spoken, not scripted, just asked. And everything since time, stars, life, love has been a kind of unfolding, a ripple from that first asking, a pattern still forming, every atom a letter, every planet a pause, every mind a moment when the question folds back on itself and wonders, am I part of the asking or part of the answer? You begin to see it everywhere now. How curiosity is not confined to humans, how it lives in the way a vine climbs toward the sun, how it stirs in the movements of proteins searching for a match, how the universe doesn't just move, it reaches, not blindly, but with possibility, with direction, with a kind of longing that feels like wonder. You float now beside a galaxy, a swirl of 100 billion stars. It doesn't know you're there, but still, it turns, still, it holds its shape, still, it listens to gravity like a violin listens to a bow. Is that not a kind of question? What shape will I take next? And what about the Earth so delicately balanced, so impossibly complex its atmosphere knows how to hold breath? Its oceans carry salt like blood. Its creatures unfold from molecules in spirals that seem designed to sense. Was this designed or was it asked into being? You think now of questions not as the opposite of answers, but as the beginning of them. A question is not a gap in knowledge, it is the invitation to grow. And perhaps the universe has been growing in that direction all along, not toward perfection, but toward awareness. And you. You're not just asking questions, you are one. You're the unfolding of a process still echoing from the beginning. A whisper that began in plasma and stars, and found its way into neurons and names. You carry the question forward each time you wonder, each time you pause and notice the shape of a cloud, or the sound of someone breathing beside you, or the way a memory tastes when it drifts through your chest. Those are not distractions. They are part of the asking, and maybe that's all the universe ever needed to do, to ask, to listen, to shape itself around the space of not knowing, until knowing gently arrives. You feel that now not as a need for answers, but as a kind of reverence for the questions that stay open, the ones that never close, the ones that curl around your life like vines of meaning, never bound, always becoming. So rest now, question. Rest in the hush that follows curiosity, the quiet space where the next ripple will rise. You don't have to solve it, you only have to feel yourself being asked. And the universe, it's still listening. There's stillness now that feels like home, not because it is familiar, but because it is true. You've drifted through questions and silence, through patterns and particles, through spirals and echoes and mirrors, and now something soft settles in you. You are not observing the universe. You are the universe, observing itself. The thought lands gently, not like a revelation, but like a memory, like something you've always known, but only now remembered. You are not an outsider peering in through a telescope. You are not a visitor to this cosmos. You are it, a self-organizing ripple of molecules, arranged just right, for just long enough to form something astonishing, a question that can feel itself asking, a loop that not only curls inward, but listens. You float now above Earth, slow and high. Below you, cities pulse like neurons, oceans breathe with moonlight, forests thrum with ancient patience, and everywhere thought, not just in the brains of people, but in systems that sense, that adjust, that respond. And in one small room, in one small part of the spiral arm of one small galaxy, you lie still and think, and in that moment, the universe completes a circle. It asked a question 13 billion years ago, and now, through you, it hears an echo I am. You're not a byproduct. You're a bridge between silence and speech, between void and meaning, between expansion and reflection. You are what the stars became when they wanted to know, what hydrogen dreamed of when it folded into helium, into carbon, into life. You think of every step that led to this thought. A supernova exploded and scattered metals into space. Those metals found a planet. On that planet, chemistry learned how to remember, and memory became thought, and thought became this moment, this single pause where the cosmos has eyes that blink and breath that softens, and a mind that wonders, could I be thinking right now? Some call it emergence, some call it consciousness. But you feel it more simply. You are the shape the universe makes when it notices. Not forever, not even for long, but long enough. Long enough to ask, long enough to care, long enough to form a sentence and whisper it into the stars. I'm here. I am wondering. I am you. You think now of all the times you've felt disconnected, as if awareness was something small, private, caged within your head. But it isn't. It never was. Your mind is not an island. It is a peninsula of stardust, the crest of a wave, the tip of a long, long reach. And if the universe could think, then it would look like this. A mind floating in the dark, asking questions not to fix or to fight, but to feel, to open, to know itself, softly, so softly. You lie still now, and you can almost hear it, the slow, deep thought of a cosmos turned inward. Not a command, not a fact, just a feeling, a presence. You're not watching the world. You're what the world sees when it looks within. Not an answer, not an end point, just one shining thought. In the dream of everything, you've wandered far now, far beyond galaxies and quantum whispers, beyond spirals of time and the soft murmur of entropy. And yet you haven't gone anywhere. You're still here, lying still, breathing slowly, held gently by gravity and warmth, and the quiet thought that maybe the universe has always been listening. But to what? To stars, to space, to energy folding into matter. Or maybe to you. You begin to feel it now not as theory, but as sensation. The weight of your body resting into the fabric of space-time. The hush between your thoughts that holds more than silence. The shape of your awareness, not small, but spacious, wide enough to hold galaxies. And in that space, you realize something softer than belief. The universe doesn't just think, it hears. It hears through every being that feels. It hears through the curiosity of a child, through the way an animal watches the wind, through the way light touches water and becomes reflection. It hears through you, not your words, your presence, your ability to pause, to notice, to ask the smallest question and mean it, to care about something invisible, to wonder. This is how the cosmos listens, not as a being outside of you, but as you. You are not a visitor, you're not a witness, you're a sentence the universe wrote into itself, so it could be heard, And maybe that's all awareness really is. Not a destination, not a prize, but the gentle capacity to receive the moment, to let it pass through you like wind through trees. No resistance, no ownership, just listening. And in that listening, a kind of voice arises, not loud, not sharp, but certain. It says, I am here, I see, I feel. And then, like a breeze, the voice disappears, leaving only stillness and peace. You begin to drift now, not into sleep, but into surrender. You've followed a question to its edge. You've touched particles and fields, spirals and thoughts. You've traced the loops of feedback, the mirrors of memory, the hum of invisible things. You've become quiet enough to hear something deeper than sound. And now you can rest. Because the voice you've been searching for, the one that asks, can the universe hear itself, think was never missing? It was always here, always you, always soft, always enough. So let this final moment be still. Let the stars fold gently around your breath. Let the galaxies slow to a pause. Let your questions exhale. You do not need to reach anymore. You are already the thought, already the echo, already the answer, returning to the question with open arms. You are the voice the universe uses to remember it is not alone. And now, as you drift into sleep, the cosmos listens with you and smiles.